Hello and welcome to episode 38 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
And I'm James Whittingham. Welcome to an entertaining discussion of the week's developments in clean energy and transportation. This week, boy, Brian, I thought we were going to have a slow week, and you're getting back to me telling me you got stories up the yang here. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's never a slow week, and it's even a holiday today, but that doesn't seem to stop the news.
Yes, it's a Remembrance Day holiday in Canada, where we are, and I've got lots of stories. I want to talk about a new report from ReThinkX. My guru, Tony Seba, and his crew have released. It's very interesting, and it reaffirms a radical notion that I, James Whittingham, had about a couple years ago, and people said, James, you're crazy. James, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, the experts are backing me up, Brian, and possibly listening to our podcast.
Well, just for the record, I want to say, James, you're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, there. It's on the record. It is logged in the podcast for eternity now, and there won't be any clerical errors overlooking that. I also want to talk about Starlink coming to Canada. Starlink, Elon Musk's satellite service for rural internet. This is interesting this week because the Canadian government is spending billions of dollars because we're a vast country, Brian. We're a vast country. We're not all in one place. People are spread out. And those people who are off in the boonies, off in the little rocks, in the icebergs, they don't have internet, and they deserve internet, especially now in the time of COVID. And we're seeing a sort of a delineation between the haves and the have-nots when it comes to remote education. And a new company is getting into the fake meat game. And that company is the same company that makes Big Macs, the same company that has made me obese. That company is McDonald's, the one with the clown. We'll be talking about them. What do you have this week?
Well, there's a few new electric vehicles on the horizon or updates to existing electric vehicles, that kind of thing. Some more reports about renewable energy versus coal, that kind of thing. The cost of electric vehicles, lots of stuff.
Yes. Well, let's get started, Brian. I'm really happy. At least I was happy on Saturday because of the election. Do you remember that day? Was that a good day for you? It was for me.
Yeah, it's things have finally resolved. I know on last week's show we had live election results.
As they came in, Brian, as they came in.
Yeah, it's basically all over, barring some ridiculous, unforeseen circumstances. But yeah, it's, so we're on track for maybe the U.S. getting back into the Paris Accord. Lots of good news for the environment
Personal
in terms
question.
of the election.
What was your reaction? Did you feel something? Did you feel anything?
Yeah, I felt relief. I felt happiness, but it had been kind of coming for a few days because if you sort of dug deep on Twitter, it was fairly clear that it was going to be called in that direction a few days earlier. So, it wasn't the big aha kind of moment. It would, because it just had been delayed for a few days. But it was relief.
Well, it crossed my mind for months. What would I do if on election night, when they called Obama's name, if they declared it then? What would I do? Would I get in my car and drive up and down the streets yelling and screaming? I think I would have. Because when it happened on Saturday, I was making my breakfast, minding my own business, and there it came. And I had every emotion all at once. I was like crying, laughing, screaming. I found myself angry. I was yelling at the TV for what's his name to go far away where it's hot and just get away, and I just...
Yeah,
and
a
whole bunch of things inside me, Ryan. A whole bunch of things. They all came out.
I want to give a shout out to all our thousands of listeners in North Dakota. We're just above North Dakota here in Canada. And I have a huge fondness for North Dakota. You and I have been to the Fargo Film Festival at the magnificent Fargo Theater. But they're really struggling in North Dakota right now. The COVID cases are crazy out of control. It's so bad there that they had somebody elected to the Senate who died from COVID. Yeah. That's how bad it is there. And it was too late to get him off the ballot, and he won anyway.
So, they talk about dead men voting. What about dead men getting elected? I assume he was a Republican.
Yeah. He was, and it's not funny. I shouldn't be laughing,
No.
but I really feel for everybody in North Dakota. It's, I mean, the numbers here in Saskatchewan are not great either. They're trending in that direction, but nothing like North Dakota, which has the highest per capita right now in the U.S.
By the way, Fargo, great city. Fantastic city,
Love it.
fantastic people. The rest of the place, they must feel like they're in the minority and roll their eyes. And when we were down there for the film festival, it was the February before the election, and Trump wasn't officially the guy, but I was actively searching for a Trump sign. I wanted to bring one back. Even then, I didn't think he'd win, but I was actively searching.
Would have been a nice
Trump
curiosity.
Sign. Didn't find one. I was going to offer someone money for it if I found it, but.
Just while we're on pandemic news, there was an announcement. It sounds, if you're an optimist like me, that we should have a vaccine supply here in Canada within the first 3 months of 2021.
And I'm going to be first in line after the nurses and doctors and first responders and people with severe underlying conditions who are, recovering from cancer or in treatment or something like that. Then comes the fat guys, okay? Then comes the fat guys. We're next in line. Screw you, skinny fuckers. So I have to bleep that out now because we're going in India. So now I have to bleep. I have to edit now because I got mad. Way to go, James.
Damn it.
Anyway, I want it first. You professors who are healthy, you don't need it. You don't need anything. Just wash your hands. Okay?
I'll just stay in my bomb shelter.
Okay, stay in your bomb shelter. Yeah, you got a bomb shelter. I don't know if it's going to protect you from the COVID, but anyway. All right, Brian, I wanted to talk about ThinkX.org, Tony Seba's website, because they, not website, organization, they are planning and studying future disruptions in technology and other things. And okay, the basic concept, and I read it, and it's very dry and technical. So even me, I got lost in it a bit, even though I'm nerdy and I have nothing to do during the pandemic. But their basic study was they studied 3 states. One was in the northeast of the United States. They're all in the United States. One was in California, and one was Texas. And what would it take to go to 100% wind, battery, and solar? Now, Tony has often said the whole world is going to be solar because it's so cheap. Well, it's not, though. He's actually have 2 times the amount for wind for some reason, which I found interesting. Often when they really got down to doing the research and studying it, they thought, well, maybe 2 times the wind from the solar. And it has nothing to do with price, because solar is, in contrast to what you said last week or the week before, I think it was the week before, solar continues to go down. And you say, James, you said to me, well, it's only like 0.9 cents or 1.5 cents. But if you're spending $1 billion on something huge and it's half that money, then it makes a difference if it's 0.5 cents or 0.9 cents. It makes it that, it's twice as much. So it's still going down at a tremendous rate. And here's what their big idea is. And this is the idea that I had and I pitched to some of the solar guys in where we live. And they just looked at me like I was an idiot. And by I'm not. We're on the record saying I'm crazy, but it is. Here's what they said. They said to overbuild. I thought, what would we do in Saskatchewan? Well, if solar was really cheap in the future, in the near future, so cheap, why not overbuild it? Because in our winters, we have very short days in December. And right now, I have 0 solar on my roof because we just had a big snowfall. I'm hoping it'll melt.
Yeah, me too.
It'll melt on Friday, hopefully. And I'll get back to normal, depending on how things go. But that doesn't affect it too much. I think a grid scale solar farm, they would either clear the panels or they would erect them in such a way that the snow would just fall off for the most part. Mine are a little bit more flat. Yours are very flat, which causes the snow to accumulate. Anyway, we have short winters here, and why not just angle the panel? If you're watching YouTube, I'm going to show you what our ideal panel angle is. It's something like that. Only about 40 degrees. But in the wintertime, on the winter solstice, it's almost vertical, okay? Because we you can actually look this stuff up where you live. It's almost vertical. And so I thought, well, why not just build up for, the worst case scenario, December 18th, overbuild it, and you don't need to use all the electricity. But what they're saying is overbuild it. And what they have is a sort of a graph. They've studied the graphs. Where is the sweet spot? Because batteries are still expensive, and they will still, be a large expense of the mix even in 10, 15 years from now. They'll be a lot cheaper than they are today because they continue to fall. But they said there's a sweet spot, and they had a little U-shaped graph. So where's the sweet spot? Or how much batteries, where it's better to overbuild the wind and solar and have less batteries. So there's an economic sweet spot for that, which I found very interesting. And they studied that. So they call it I believe they call it superpower. And this is their concept of having, basically they said some days we'll have twice the energy of an average use of, say, year-round. Your average use year-round, whatever it is. Some days this system would have twice the energy needed. So that's to meet 100% clean energy. But what do you do with that? Here's what you do with it. You use it for things such as powering cars. Maybe you power cars for free. Maybe you power buses for free. Maybe you power school buses for free. Maybe you make water from salt waters from a desalination project, which uses lots of energy. That's been talked about when solar becomes really cheap, making water from the ocean. And because there is a lot of water in the ocean last time I checked. And it's not.
I heard that, yeah.
Not a terrible thing to use a lot of it as it is in lakes. And of course, there's other things like making hydrogen. Just make the hydrogen when you have the extra power, but you have the extra power most of the time. And just when those times when you don't, when it's been cloudy or calm or just a long period of time, then you just say, I guess those workers get laid off or they don't work all the time. I don't know how that works, but this is the concept. And they did an extensive job proving it out. And now I await your thoughts.
Well, yeah, I think the tricky part is what you just alluded to there. How do you run a business of, say, making hydrogen when you might run the business Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then have to lay everybody off for 5 days and then bring them back? That's the only, it's a sort of a grid issue, like you're talking about overbuilding the grid, but all of these separate projects could be separate businesses. So it's a matter of how you coordinate all those things.
Well, you could. I mean, when the energy is free, though, because you remember it's next to free. Free or next to free is what they're talking about with a system like this. So that opens up a lot of possibilities. If you're working for free, you could just have the people sit around in the lunchroom for 3 days. I don't know, or have a paid day off to do community labor.
Or do you say you're the grid? You say, okay, we've overbuilt. We have this extra power. Somebody want to build a hydrogen plant, we'll give you free power, and that's their incentive to build a plant. Would you do that? But then how do you decide who gets the contract?
I don't see that as a big problem. I don't think Tony does either. I think these guys are just looking at the concept, and that the other parts get worked out. So I think that's very interesting. And I think it's, regardless of what you think about this, I think it's inevitable that when things get cheap enough in the next few years and beyond, that it's going to become there's going to be an oversupply of it. And there already is in California. California had an oversupply of it. They didn't know what to do with it. And they did all this analysis based on having zero hydro. We even have hydro in Saskatchewan here, even though we use half of it is coal that we use right now, or 45% or something. No nuclear, and no interconnection between regions. This is what they did the study on. So you add those things into the mix and it becomes suddenly cheaper because you have some hydro, some base load. Maybe you have some nuclear. Maybe you can share. One place has an excess, then that excess goes to the other. This is some of the things that were talked about when Hillary Clinton was running against Barack Obama. She was proposing stuff like, I was looking at their green energy plans in 2007 and 2008, and they were talking about, well, we have to upgrade the grid. We have to upgrade the grid for a smart grid to go between regions. Hasn't happened. Not so much.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, the grid's got to smarten up, and then all this stuff is possible.
So what are the many things you want to talk about this week?
Well, there's a bunch of car news. Maybe I'll go over some of it quickly here. Tesla has confirmed a new 82 kilowatt hour battery pack in the Model 3. So previously, I believe the biggest pack was 75. And this is just from that energy density increase that we were, I think, talking about last week, where Panasonic makes the cells. These are the older 2170 cells. And just by tweaking the chemistry, they've sort of increased the energy density by about 5%. So this is now the confirmation in that. It's basically the same battery pack that they used to make before, but with the tweaked cells, it's 5% more energy density. So it's an 82 instead of a 75, and this is now official.
So these are baby steps, but they're not insignificant. They're not insignificant. One thing that I learned when I had my solar system installed in my house, my rooftop solar, I couldn't do it at first, and I had to wait a year before we could get the financing done. And in that year, my inverter, the big box in one of my rooms of the house that converts the solar from DC power into AC power that can go into the grid and into your walls and everything and use, that became something like 3% more efficient. So it was like 98% efficient instead of 95 in that 1 year. And it was the same price. Okay, that's the same thing. But for 30 years, I'll have 3% more electricity in my house for free.
That's a big deal.
And that is a huge deal. And it's even a bigger deal when technology like this at the grid scale, which is, 10,000 times the size of my house or whatever, is little baby steps make a big deal in this world that we're talking about. So, and the price has not gone up, right? It's the same price?
Same price. If anything, it's probably dropped a little bit from when the car first came out. So yeah, just a 5% increase. Yeah, for a car that's only been out for 3 years, that's amazing.
It is amazing. And it's going to continue to happen. And maybe some of those increments will be a little bit bigger than others, but it's a march that is steadily going on. And so many people, when they complain about electric cars, or they complain about solar or wind or whatever the things that we talk about on this show, they never look at the trajectory of things. The trajectory of things is unstoppable, and it's continuing into the future. And by the way, I just wanted to go back to the ReThinkX things for a second. They do call it superpower, and it is about building more than you need, build maybe twice as much as average to cover the rare occurrences, which I found interesting. And the sweet spot was, between solar and overbuilding. And the 2-to-1 wind over solar mix, I would love to have Tony on the show to ask him about that, because I found that very interesting. But solar does have a continuing cost curve. Onshore wind is forecast to be 40% cheaper by 2030. And all this report was based on 2030. And solar is looking to be 80% cheaper by 2030. 80%, Brian Stockton, who said solar is irrelevant about the solar going down, 80% less. That's crazy.
That's pretty amazing, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?